Welcome to a Running on Grass podcast. I'm Logan Pripino from Wineglass Ranch out here in southwest Nebraska, and with me, as always, is my co-rancher, Eamon O'Toole.
Hey, Logan. Good to hear from you. I'm in south central Wyoming, northwest Colorado.
And you guys are here for podcast 1.0, and today we're going to be talking about the real stuff, real ranch talk, affecting our operations right now, bone-dry conditions, sky-high cattle prices, what we can learn from a big-time cattle feeder, and what the JBS plant in Greeley coming back online means for us. Eamon, how are the drought conditions in your neck of the woods in Wyoming?
Yeah, we're really dry, just like everybody else in the West, I think. And we've had a plan here for several years where we don't winter cows here because we get so much winter. And this year was the opposite of that. We've never seen anything like it.
Yeah, this is the driest ever for pretty much all of the Mountain West. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, I'm 50 miles north of Steamboat Springs at our home ranch. And as we saw from all the videos online, the skiing was not good anywhere in the West. So I would say it was very similar for us in the ranching community. We thought it was a pretty easy winter, but that also leads to a pretty tough spring and possibly really tough summer. We did get a hit with about a half inch of rain last week and then followed by 4 inches of snow here and up to a foot as you get higher up in the mountains. So we actually got a little shot that is helping us, although the windy, dry conditions today are sucking that right back out.
Yeah, we also caught a half inch out of that same storm. We had some wheat that was dying, some dryland winter wheat, just in places in rough spots, and that moisture that we got completely turned it around and really helped with the mood of everything here and how everyone's feeling. It's like it was, in February it was, man, this is the best winter ever, and then March rolls around and you're like, okay, like it was a really good winter, but let's start raining or snowing just to give us some hope. So it turned into, wow, this is wonderful, to, boy, what's this going to bring really quick.
Right. And then to have such a great summer like you guys had last year with all that rain and then the wildfires that just came through and ate up all that grass that everybody had stockpiled and thought, boy, we're going to have a great summer. We've never had this kind of grass left over before.
Yeah, we were not affected by the fires, but in Nebraska, in western Nebraska, we had just one of the best years yet, where it just rained like every week. Every time you needed a rain, you got one. And so everyone's place was in pristine condition, which only made the fires burn hotter and take more residue, which ended up not being a good thing for those folks.
Yeah. And, I think we talked last summer, I was in the opposite situation where, man, I can't catch a rain. I think we went at least 90 days without a rain or anything last year. And it was just a dang tough summer and then to not have a winter. So the drought, we're really feeling it here in south central Wyoming, northwest Colorado. What are you doing over in Nebraska for your drought plan?
Sure. We're stocked pretty light. We sold another round of cows last year. We'll be running mostly yearlings this summer, probably 75% yearlings on an AUM basis, 25% cow-calf. So that's a good mix. If you're dry, you get better gains, you can get them off and kind of rest your grass. We're also doing that 25% deferral that we've been doing with Grassroots Carbon. We are calving on that deferral, how that worked out this last year. To be honest, we have a very good conservative drought plan out the gate, just to be on the safe side.
Perfect. Yeah, that's tough. And I think a lot of guys in Nebraska are in that position where they're trying to figure out, what can they get on that they hopefully didn't overuse or use last year.
Yeah. And in Nebraska, unlike Wyoming, the next 90 days for sure, and definitely the next 60 days will tell us what we need to know. We can't really bank up water in the sandhills. It tends to be halfway to the aquifer. If we get it in January, it doesn't really go to grass in my personal experience. So we'll know a lot more in about 60 days here. So we're not getting too excited yet, but prepared to get excited.
We're a little bit the opposite. We have to have that monster winter snowpack. We live just at the base of the Continental Divide on the western slope here. So if we can get a big winter, that really guarantees at least the front half of the summer, and we get enough runoff that it fills up our aquifers, and that gives us irrigation water, where we do a lot of flood irrigating and very little pivot irrigating over here in this part of the world. We're at the very upper part of the Colorado River system. My headquarters is about 7,000 feet. So not having any of that winter snowpack really to come down, I think we're we've probably seen the peaks here in our community on our river and hoping that we can catch some of these rains to save us for the rest of the summer. But that if we can get one like we had last week, every week all summer, we'll survive.
Yeah, you are in a totally different area. I've learned in working with you over the last 10 years where you kind of know at turnout what you're going to get, where we are just about the opposite. But
Yeah.
switching from the terrible drought to new, fresh, all-time highs in the cattle market. So the live cattle are now at exceeding an all-time high on at least some of the contracts, and the feeder cattle are right on their heels. How does that affect your outlook?
This is so exciting. I think everybody, and being at NCBA this year, you could just tell there was a different mood among everybody that this thing is really good and this is time to hopefully put some reserves away. And as I joke, we're starting to run out of that 2014-15 money. So it's pretty nice to see these high prices. I saw some cattle, some 5-weight sell through a barn yesterday for $3,000 a head. I'm looking at forward contracting some calves and hoping for the same. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity, and it's just tough where we've got these high interest rates. How invested in this market do you want to get? But I think there's still a lot of opportunity. I went out and bought a lot of heifers like I've been doing the last several years. I think there's still opportunity to buy heifer calves, breed them, and have a bred heifer product next fall, winter to pass on to the consumers so that we can keep growing some females in this market.
Yeah, so we both sold bred heifers together. Eamon has a summer program. I got the winter program, and we both had some for sale last year. And I think it's safe to say that it was a home run for both of us last year on the bred heifer front.
Yeah, let's get into that a little bit, Logan. When you're looking at how you're going to put your next year together and the quality of heifers or steers or whatever you're going to put together, how are you going into that?
Sure. So we had a big cow herd still last year, so we have a lot of home raised stock, which is a good thing when we went to go buy in the fall. But put together, we bought all heifers. I thought I would be buying steers right now. I thought we'd be seeing a heifer premium. But throughout the fall and the winter, I consistently saw heifers back, $30-$40, which is significant enough to keep a heifer. So we've been buying about the same quality of heifers, but I have not bought a steer other than my home raise, which, you buy in a while. But I'm keeping the quality high because we got to resell. I can't, we have a reputation here in Southwest Nebraska, and I have to sell them to a recurring customer. And so we tend to buy a higher quality replacement. How about yourself? What did you end up getting bought this winter?
Well, I think, to touch on what you just said, I think it's important that we keep up that quality for the customer. We're starting to see some repeat customers that really like the cattle we're putting together. I've historically been putting them together from southern Montana and northern Wyoming. Being that it's lower numbers out there, I think it's been tougher to put those good quality heifers together. And I really kind of scoured the country and went and found big groups that I could put together that were high quality off of good places. So that's what I did, but it was harder than normal. Normally you can go in and buy pens full of good quality calves. And this year a guy had to go work at it because there just aren't the number of cattle out in the country. So, as a heifer breeder, and I want to keep quality genetics going through the country, I think that's the important part, is making sure that we keep something that the customer wants. And it seems like that's what you're doing too.
Yeah, same. When you resell multiple years like that, it's important. You can fool somebody once, maybe twice, but not 3 times. What's your long-term view? Like expansion, break, all gas? What are you thinking since we're at all-time highs?
Yeah, I've been throwing a lot of ideas around, and I think my sister thinks I'm totally nuts. And, we had the idea of, should we be doing what you did and sell our cow herd? And running the numbers, I think that we've talked about this in the past. Should a guy hold them and get this great calf crop out of them that appears to be coming around that $3,000 number for a steer? Or should a guy, go ahead and sell that good bred cow right now and be a little destocked during a droughty situation? And I think we've kind of come to the point, at least now, we're going to try and get that calf, and then we'll see what things look like in the fall.
Yeah. And as someone who sold a bunch of cows a couple months ago, I think you're doing the right thing. You're only a couple months away from being able to lock in a price on the calves on those. And, the drought picture also makes things a little bit more complicated. as someone who did sell cows, I think there's going to be another year on this thing, and we're only a couple months away from being able to secure that in. And the reason we did sell, we sold earlier than we wanted to, because this thing really started popping off in 2022. And I sat down with my dad, and other folks. It originated with my dad, and it really started going good in 2022. And we sat down at that time and we're like, our original plan was sell in 2027, the entire herd. And then we had some purchasing opportunities that came up in the meantime. And we just got a little nervous, to be honest with you. It just seemed to happen sooner, but it's looking like this thing, it is going to be humped like everyone says, and it's going to be extended. And, the fall isn't going to be like it was in 2015, 2016. It just could not find a bottom. So I think you got a great plan.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I have the opportunity to visit with guys like you, and I sure stretched out and I talked to everybody I knew that I thought knew a lot more than me, which there's plenty, and that's a long list. But I visited with Greg Maddox a bit, not Greg Maddox, Greg Simons. And I also visited with John Maddox, and they gave me great advice. And so seems like,
boy, it'd be nice to be able to call one guy and get Greg Simons and John Maddox and all wrapped up in one.
Yeah, we'll call him Greg Maddox, and we'll put him on a call together. So yeah, we pretty spoiled there that have access to visit with really smart guys, and I take pride in having those relationships and trying to take advantage of them. You and I talked a while back. There's just those guys that are so smart and have experienced so many things. It seemed to be making the perfect moves at the perfect time as we watch this market go up. I think there's a lot to be learned from those guys, and I sure want to take advantage of it while they're willing to pass on their information.
Yeah, that's one of the nice things about ranching. It's a very close-knit community, and I think the vast majority of them are very open and honest and willing to share their experiences and, what they've learned over their career. And I also try to take full advantage of that.
Yeah, I was just thinking too, you and I both talked to Burke Teichert. Have you picked up anything that you're using in the cycle we're in now, that information he passed on to you?
Yeah, so Burke would have visited almost 10 years ago, and he created a report, an 8-point report, which I really appreciate that he took the time to put it in writing. I've been able to revisit it annually. When I get a key employee, I'm able to send it on to him, and I'm saying, hey, Burke looked at our operation X amount of years ago, and he put together this plan. How can you help me implement it? And a couple years ago, we looked back on it, and we had hit all eight points on that plan. And the fact that he was able to write it out in a 2-page report and to go revisit it was such a critical component, to where it's like, what did Burke say we should do this? And it's like, well, go, he wrote it out. Let's go take a look at it. So you can't misinterpret what has been said when you're trying to still implement it 8 years later.
Yeah, same thing. I think he was at my place sometime in that general time frame as well, and wrote me out a thing. And I've told my wife and probably you before, if I would have followed everything he sent me right when I got it, I would be 10 years ahead of where I am today. Probably there were, different reasons, family dynamics, things that, we didn't want to jump the gun and make too many changes too fast, and which is totally fine. I understand why my parents were like, let's do this a little slower and make sure that we're covering all our bases. We have, a very complex operation that's spread over 150 miles from north to south, and we have a sheep part of our operation as well. And so there's just a lot of moving pieces here that are different than many other operations. So I think that's why we approached it more slowly, but I appreciate that we did that, and I've had plenty of time to think on it, and we've sure learned a lot. And I go back, like you said, to his at least once a year, probably more like once every 3 months. And I'm like, am I still covering the bases on these things that I should be doing? Because that, I don't want to say it's my Bible for my plan, but it is certainly a guiding star for where Ladder Ranch is trying to get to.
Yeah. And those were almost 10 years ago for both of us. I think you called me, Eamon and I have known each other for well over 10 years now, but early on when we were talking, you called me up and said, hey, I just had Burke Teichert out. He only charged me $1,000 for a 2-day consultation. And he said, if you call, it'll be $1,000. If your dad calls, I think he charges $3 or $4. So you better call him now. And I called him, I think that's it, like a couple months later, and had him out for that 2-day consult. Yeah, almost 10 years ago. Who are you going to hit up, going forward once we kind of get through these all-time highs and into a new reality. Who's the new person? Who's the new Burke Tiker?
Boy, I think I keep banging on his door for one.
Yeah.
So long
Until
as he'll keep
until
taking
he
my
doesn't answer
calls.
it
Yeah,
anymore.
if he'll keep taking my calls, then I'll keep calling. So, but I've named 3 of the guys that really helped me a lot over the years. But I've had Greg Simons out. We do a lot of intensive grazing, running your heifers on our ranch, getting them bred, and then, like you said, then in the wintertime, sending them back to you when I'm starting to get into fall, winter, and my grass is going dormant and turning into winter here. So I've had Greg out, and when I spent several hours on a 4-wheeler, and I said, Greg, give me the good, give me the bad, give me the ugly. I can take it, really. And we drive around for a while, and after we look at the cattle and look at the country, and he says, yeah, I think you're starting to figure it out. And I'm like, well, I'd really like you to, nail on me a little bit and be like, boy, you're really grazing this piece terribly, and this piece looks a little bit better, but it's still terrible, or something like that. And he just, very almost fatherly was like, you're figuring it out. You just got to keep doing it, and then your eyes will lead you in the right direction if you know what your desired outcome looks like.
Yeah, I mean, you and I are just about the same age, been doing it just the same amount of time. And after you hit that year 10 plus, get into 12, 13, 14, this is my 14th year for me. It does feel nice. You're like, I kind of got my arms around it. There's going to be some surprises, but not a lot after that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And, just like Greg told me, you're going to figure it out. You just got to keep doing it and learn what worked and learn what didn't. And make sure you write down what didn't.
Yeah. And I've been on ranch tours where, the purpose is to be like, your cows look good. I do like how you point out to Greg, it's like, hey, critique me here. Like I'm a grown man. I can take it. What don't you like? Because a lot of times people don't, when they're visiting your place, they're not just going to open with well, I don't like this. I don't like that. And I don't like that. You're like, geez, thanks. So
that hurt my feelings.
Yeah, that hurt my feelings. But, I appreciate that you were able to be like, I've got a smart guy out here. You tell me what I'm not doing well, because that's what I want to hear about more than anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And, yes, tell me a little more about, are you doing anything? We'll wrap up the drought conversation. Is there anything that you're thinking going into fall, or are you ready for it? Do you have anything that you want to change now before we get that far?
Get into fall. Like I said, we can kind of ship yearlings kind of dependent. They did have a good winter. We did have a lot out grazing corn stalks with the down corn, so our winter performance was better than usual. Had some on feed. The performance was also great just because of the pen conditions. Looking into the fall, I'm not there yet. We'd run a lot of corn stalks. It's a big part of our program, and I like to start that process in June. So I really haven't got there to the fall. But in weaning, we're talking about running pairs on corn stalks this year, so we don't wean. Our cow herd is down to a level where we think that we can wrap our arms around that. But yeah, I'll look to ship yearlings early is my big trigger. Do you have any thoughts on that for what you will do to get to the fall?
So, in terms of our mother cow herd, we have a lot of national forests that we can run on, which is such a blessing. That's where we summer, and the summers are always good. Even if you have a light winter, they still got snow. Things still look better than they normally do in the rest of the country in that high snowpack, high elevation stuff. So I've actually put on halter collars on all my cows, and we can get into the details of that at some other time. But I'm pretty worried about having forest fires. I've got a lot of down timber in my forest country. It will be drier than it's ever been. The forest is going to let us get on about a week, 10 days early this year, with the expectation that maybe we'll have to come off early if we don't have any rain all summer. So in that, I'm planning on probably shipping calves, moving everything up 2 weeks in the fall. So I may be shipping calves in middle of October, rather than first part of November, which is when it's time to get out of this mountain country. I'm pretty excited about the collars, just in sense of, if we do end up in a fire situation, we're going to have those cattle in, where we have 55,000 acres of forest there. We're going to be able to have them in maybe a 3,000 to 5,000 acre paddock on the forest. And so we'll be able to get a handle on our cattle relatively quickly if we end up in a tight situation with a fire coming at us.
Yeah, and I do think we should hit on the callers in a future podcast. We'll be caller in 800 on Friday. And we obviously ran your cows collared this winter, but I want to hit on it. But for your use case where you're running close to 1 million acres and need to find those animals, I don't think there's a better use case than those callers for the ladder ranch. I think it's going to be a great tool for you guys.
Yeah, it's a game changer. And obviously, we're hoping that it has a lot to do with, there's definitely a cost to using those. There's money out there to do things, but also our big hope is that we can do some savings on labor because that's probably our highest cost here on our operation. I think it is on a lot of people. So,
Yeah, it was eye-opening for me to visit you the first time, and I sat at the bunkhouse, and there was over a dozen people in there, and that wasn't even your full staff. Half of your staff was out in sheep camps and cow camps. It
yeah.
was crazy to me to wrap my head around.
Yeah. One thing I think we're looking at is, yeah, we're going to use these collars, but we're actually going to staff our cows harder, where we're going to have a man living in a cow camp with those cattle, with Starlink in his camp, so he can be moving those cattle. And they've come out with a new product where it's going to show the heat on those cows. So our idea is,
Saw that.
let's go ahead and that cowboy that's living with those cows can go out and say, okay, there's 10 cows over here and they're all kind of hanging out together like a bunch of broody cows that are all coming into heat do. Well, let's make sure that he's got that group of cows. Either he takes them to a bull or he gets a bull over to that group of cows. And in the past, we just haven't had that kind of control on our operation because you couldn't without the collars. And now that's going to be a really cool addition.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, I spent 10 years in California, half of those in the Silicon Valley, primarily financial stuff, but I was working with some startup companies. But half my friends are tech. And when I asked my rancher friends, what do you think of the collars and, where they're going with it? And they're kind of like, there might be some value there, I think. And then my tech friends are like, dude, your cows are going to be hooked up to AI. Just figure out the logistics now. He's like, what they're doing now in 5 years won't even be recognizable. So it's just very interesting to hear from the two camps on that, versus maybe it could be just a fad versus this is the real deal and you better just figure out how to do it now because what's coming is inevitable.
The Peter Thiels of the world don't throw out $2 billion on ideas that don't make sense.
No, I don't think that's even walking around cash for him.
Well, what's next?
Did you check out the Levi Jordan interview?
I was not able to get in deep enough on that. So no, I wouldn't say I'm prepared to get into that.
Okay. Well, you do need to check it out. He's the Kosher Cowboy. He is the largest feed yard owner in the United States of America. They own and operate JBS. It was a great interview. I learned a lot from it. Got a lot of criticism on Twitter. I didn't see any of that. He looked like a capitalist to me, operating efficiently in the capitalistic market. So yeah, check it out. We can dive into it on the next podcast.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's continue the conversation on the JBS stuff. What a huge boomerang, right? In the whole industry. When the JBSs jump out, you hope that they're going to come back, that they can keep killing cattle in the world we're in today. And there's just the hook space is really important, whether it's high or low. We have to all keep a close eye on that.
Yeah, I'm sure that the reason that we're at all-time high is directly tied to this. It was interesting to watch the market for a week climb higher before the official announcement. So I'm sure that there was some leaked information there. But yeah, happy to have JBS Greeley back online. Welcome, boys.
Right. Well, as people have asked me, they're like, what do you think this has to do with the market? And I'm the Wyoming representative for the Meat Export Federation. So kind of get to see a little bit deeper picture on what the world looks like. And when you start seeing that those guys are losing $250 a head and all their employees are like, we're going to go on strike. I think the JBS guys have got to be thinking, this is fantastic. We're not going to lose $250 a head tomorrow. And then when the thing turned around and they're starting to see some profits, well, all of a sudden we got guys back to work.
Yeah. I subscribe to a couple newsletters and one of them tries to guesstimate packer losses by the week. And it's amazing how crazy with the price of beef and the price of cattle. It's amazing how, they can go 1 month for making a little bit of money. And then I've read like the large plants on those really bad weeks, like they're losing $1 million a day on the operations. And it's just like, wow,
Yeah.
that scale is unimaginable to operate at $1 million daily loss. Be like, what are you doing next week?
Yeah.
Just keep on keeping on.
I can't even fathom. And I guess that's why, I joke about earlier, I'm starting to run out of that 14, 15 money. And so with those guys, they see a good week, they start cashing that away and putting it in their piggy banks. And then when they start losing $1 million a week, they start pulling from that bank.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, just enjoy the all time. I'll tell you, the reason why they are willing to lose $1 million is historically they get all of it back within less than 2 years. So they can accumulate their losses and they are made whole once this thing turns in 2 years. So they aren't dummies when it comes to losing $1 million a day. They've got an end game in plan, I'm sure.
No, and they have to pay taxes just like the rest of us. So that kind of helps them turn on some taxes.
Yes.
So, that it was interesting. I spent a little bit of time down on the Front Range this winter, and I was eating at a local Mexican restaurant there near Greeley, and I went in and I was there pretty late in the evening, and there's a gal that I think her family owned the restaurant, and the food is amazing, by the way, there in Greeley. But I said, what's going on here? Like, what's the local community do? What does your family do? We kind of got to visiting there. And she said, well, most of my family works at the JBS plant or at the other local plant. And I said, well, are they worried about anything? Or we're seeing all these great prices on the cow calf side. What do they feel like they're seeing on the actual guys on the floor cutting up the livestock? And they said, this gal told me everyone's worried that their job is going to be the next one that goes because they're worried they're going to shut a plant down just like they did in Lexington. And how far does that go? So it's pretty interesting to hear the on the ground story of what your local Mexican restaurant lady has in her family and their dynamics versus what you see when you get up to talking about the Batista family and, how they make decisions.
And then tie this all into AI taking everyone's jobs.
Yeah, my main guy jokes because we're using these halter collars, and then also, I'm putting stuff together, trying to figure out AI as best I can as a kindergartner, basically, in the whole operation. And he's like, yeah, internet's taking my job, man. I'm like, well, it's just making your job a little bit easier, but it's definitely not taking it. Somebody still has to be out there and look at cattle on the ground and make sure that health is good. And AI can't do that.
No, and it will never ever quite get that far. I don't imagine, but it's hard to imagine it at all. I will say that most people I talk to with the AI stuff, their AI is taking over everyone's job but their own, because their own job is nuanced and nuanced and detailed in a way that AI could never create, but everyone else's job is susceptible because it's not nearly as difficult or nuanced. So it's very fascinating to see how that kind of rolls out in the conversation where it's like, everyone is okay. Everyone's screwed but me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I have a sister that works for a corporate company, and she's using AI a lot in her job, but it's work from home job. And she is the same. I'm like, man, it seems like your job, I would be worried about those kind of AI taking your job. And she's like, well, same thing. I'm using AI a lot to do my job, but it's not taking my job. But we'll see how much as people get smarter to it. Just like when we first got Google, we were all like, cavemen trying to figure out how many fingers and toes and how that all got counted up versus now we're starting to, on the front end of AI, using it like Google. But it's, what our kids are going to be able to do with this stuff is going to blow our minds.
Yeah, I know. So going back to it, there have been some prominent thought leaders that say there won't be schools or teachers in 500 days. There was also a thought leader that said, enjoy your last year of meaningful work. I believe it was the CEO of YouTube, I think. And so there are a lot of people predicting some fairly bold futures for us. So to kind of wrap it up, I think that's maybe one of the things we can get into next time is how that is going to affect the beef industry in particular. Also check out that Levi Jordan interview. It's an hour, 40 minutes. I've sent it to a number of people. I think it's well worth your time. I'd like to hit on that. What would you like to hit on when we get together in 2 weeks here?
Let's make that Levi conversation a big piece of it. And, it'd be easy to flow right into talking about halter and
Yeah.
what it's going to do for both of our operations. As you said, you're about to halter 800 heifers. Well, those heifers, for our listeners, are going to come to me for the summer. And I kind of pushed Logan into saying, hey, what do you think of doing this? Because I'm using 2 employees full time to move electric fence around, and we're doing 20 to 25 acres a head a day for 800 head of heifers in our grazing system. And boy, collars would sure make that a lot easier. So I think that'd be a really cool way to move into our next segment as well.
Yep, I agree. And obviously, we've had your cows on collars here in the winter, grazing the down corn on the corn stalks, and your cows were hog fat coming off. And we just wouldn't have we would have used poly is what we would have done and what we did on some of the other groups. But I think that's great. I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. This is the first version. Look for us about every other week. Look forward to chat with you again.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Logan.